Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today, we're going to tap into a new industry. It's been around for quite some time. We're talking about the podcast industry. We're talking about a hobby or a career. And we seen right after COVID, everybody was on this quest to be an overnight sensation. I'll be the first to admit I knew nothing about podcasting. It landed in my lap, and I remember saying these words: "This is the future." But when you say this is the future, you got to ask yourself. You can see a vision, and some of us are visionaries. We can see things far out, but in order to get to those destinations, you're going to have a lot of hurdles to overcome. With that said, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the guests that we have on the show. Our show, the Andre The Beast Crayton Show, is about that beast mindset and the journey that it takes to get there. And when you're creating something new, you got to have the pieces in place. And a lot of times, being an entrepreneur and starting something new and diving into something that's new, you're going to run into a lot of hurdles. And you're going to need to understand that even though it's your vision, you can't wear every single hat to complete this mission. I reached out to our guests because I don't like to wear all the hats. And when I need help, I need to find resources, individuals that have mastered in their craft. And today on the show, we have a young man who's definitely is a master at his craft. I'd like to welcome to the show Bryce Prescott. Bryce, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Andre. I truly appreciate the conversation we're going to have. I appreciate what you've created with your show. It's awesome. And thank you for letting me be a part of it for a moment.
I appreciate that. Before we get started into how me and you met, let's take the viewers down who Bryce Prescott actually is. We know you're not candid Prescott, unfortunately. But tell the viewers a little bit about who you are and where you came from and so forth.
Sure. So yeah, my name is Bryce Prescott. I've been in the podcast game since 2012, and I got into it on the tail end of a failed career as a commodities broker.
Wow. Before
I was in commodities, I was a mortgage broker. I was in the banking world. And there was a couple other things that were a part of what I considered my identity as well. I skied professionally for a short time. I was a musician for a short time. And I found myself at the end of my commodities career really wanting access to people because I had been humbled. I thought I knew what I was doing in business. I had failed miserably, and I had heard of this medium of podcasting as something that could allow me to provide something of value to somebody else in exchange for being able to have a conversation with them as we're doing now.
When you say that you failed miserably, Bryce, do me a favor. Explain to the viewers, when you say commodities broker, is that like Wall Street where you're dealing with orange juice, meat products? What exactly is the commodity side that you was dealing with? And then let's go back to elaborate a little bit more on you failed miserably.
Sure. So when I got out of the mortgage business, it was on the tail end of, you might recall back in 2008 when there was the big crash and the credit crisis and the banks were failing.
Yeah.
That had a direct impact on my business as a mortgage broker. So many of the loan products that we were doing failed. At that time, I had a large book of business and a book of clients, but yet I had nothing to do with them. There was no product I could provide, no sort of way to network with them because they were mortgage clients.
Right.
I met up with a gentleman that I met that was on the East Coast, and a little bit more about me, just as an aside, is that I speak fluent Portuguese, and I had spent for a time in my early 20s several years in Brazil. Okay. And so I understood the landscape of Brazil. I had contacts back in Brazil. And this gentleman approached me, we made friends, and he said, look, I've got all these connections in Southeast Asia, and they're looking for actual commodities. They're looking for soybeans, they're looking for sugar, they're looking for corn. And we're trying to broker deals between South America and Southeast Asia so that we can make a cut. And he asked me if I would want to go into business with him. I said, absolutely. When this happened, though, it was I neglected to say this part. When I got out of mortgages, it opened me up for a 3.5-year career in the real estate investment space. Because of the credit crisis, homes were being sold for pennies on the dollar. There was a real opportunity, if you had access to capital, to go buy a lot of real estate and then to turn them into cash producing assets.
Right.
So I had done that. And so we ended up, though, losing that business, not because we failed at it, but because we were legislated out of our business model. The government decided to change the laws relative to how real estate and banking were in that specific sector. And so I was sitting on a pile of money, and I had a book of business, and I didn't know what to do. And I met this gentleman on the East Coast, and we decided to start traveling the world to broker these commodity transactions. So if some company, for example, in Hong Kong, they needed 300,000 metric tons of soybeans, we would go to South America to find that product, and then we would arrange the transaction. When I say that I failed miserably, what I mean is that I did that for 2.5 years, and I didn't close a single deal. I burned through my cash that I was sitting on trying to put together these deals in hopes that I was going to make massive commissions, because in that space, contracts they have multiple commas in them. They're very, very large. Your commissions can be sometimes 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures if you get a big enough deal is what your cut might be. And I was really drawn to the idea of that sort of wealth, putting these deals together, and it didn't work. What actually led me to become a podcaster was associated with this time of my life, because I was sitting, I remember it vividly, I was sitting in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I was drunk. I was in a bar that was in a hotel lobby, and we had flown out on our dime this group of Chinese businessmen to confirm that we had access to the product that they had said if we could prove that we had it, that we would go under contract, and it was going to be a massive deal for us. Well, come to find out, we were hoodwinked, and they were there to see several other people as well, even though we were the ones that paid for them. And this had all come to light. I was on the tail end of my cash. I was borderline bankrupt at that moment. And I had this sort of come to Jesus moment where I said, what am I doing? I thought I knew business. I thought I knew how to work this. I'd clearly made money in the past. What is going on?
Right.
And I had to really be honest with myself with that. I basically had the most expensive 2.5-year education I could have ever dreamed of, with all the money that I lost, but yet with the lessons that I learned. And so I wanted to learn from actual successful people. Right. And it just so happened to be at that time, I was aware of what podcasts were. Joe Rogan had a podcast at that time. There were several other celebrities that I was aware of that I would listen to their shows. And, Tim Ferriss had a podcast that was popular then. And I would listen to those podcasts in my spare time or on the flights or wherever, traveling back and forth from the United States to these different countries. And that idea popped in my mind in that drunken stupor. I was like, well, hey, man, maybe start a podcast. Maybe you can then talk to some of these people and actually learn the things that you thought you already knew.
Right.
And so I did it. I started a podcast. The podcast was called Rules of Success. And the focus of that podcast was about creating balance and dynamism in your life in all of the key areas, your health and fitness, of course, your money, your connection to God and spirit, and then, of course, your relationships, your interpersonal and personal relationships. Mm-hmm. And so I started it then. When I referenced that I failed miserably, what I meant by that is that I was truly up against a wall. When I was sitting at that bar in Sao Paulo, Brazil, like I said, I was broke. It had taken a toll on my body. I actually didn't learn this until a few months later, but I was about to be diagnosed with testicular cancer and lymphoma a few months later. Wow. And I was at a place where everything that I thought was going to be happening for me wasn't happening. I had made a lot of money in the real estate game. I was thinking I was going to leverage that in an investment way towards this other industry and commodities to make even more money, and I ended up losing it all.
Were you in a relationship, Bryce, at this crucial point in your life? Were you involved with anyone?
Yeah, I've been married for, it'll be 19 years in the month of May.
How did that affect your relationship?
It was extremely strenuous on the relationship. It was, I'm more of a traditional type guy, and that I feel that it's my responsibility to provide for my family and
Hmm.
have my wife have her responsibilities be at home. And because of what I had spent and invested in this other business, she had to go back to work. We had interpersonal struggles with each other, with trust, because I had failed and we had thought these things were going to happen. I had put us in a very bad way financially with some of the choices I had made, under the idea that I was, of course, going to succeed. But then when I didn't, and I was left there broke, it of course affected my marriage in a bad way. It affected my health in a bad way. It affected my relationship with myself in a bad way, because I was very humbled and needed to. I thought that I knew things that I actually didn't know, and I had to come to terms with that reality, and it pretty much sucked.
How hard was it to come to terms with that? That because it appears right now, just listening to your story, and I'd like to personally thank you for taking time out and share your beautiful story as well. But it seems like when your back was against the wall, the people that really your wife. I mean, I can imagine, I guess, but I mean, you had to be like, what the fuck do I do?
Yeah, I was. I was confused. I was scared. I I had to adopt a new identity. It
Hmm.
was in this time, though, that I was reminded of a very simple principle. And that principle is that if you are not getting an answer that makes sense to you, you're asking the wrong question. And at my period in my life at this time, I wasn't getting answers that made sense. And so I had to start asking new questions.
What were the
And
old
that
questions
put,
that you was asking yourself then?
who am I really? What is my purpose here? What am I really supposed to be spending my time doing here on earth? As a father, as a husband, as a human being, what am I supposed to be doing here? It removed, in a way, a lot of the selfishness that I'd had as a successful entrepreneur from before. Because anybody that's made any amount of money, you realize it's very easy to become proud and to think that your shit doesn't stink, and that there's a certain thing about you that's better than other people. Like, at least that was my experience when I was, flossing and had all the nice stuff. I got arrogant, and that got
Really?
removed. And the questions that I had to ask myself were relative to, well, who am I really? What do I want out of this life, and how am I going to get it? And realizing, again, it sounds cliche, but there was nobody was going to save me. I had to do this on my own. It was something that I had to build myself back.
When you look
And that's just a
back,
harsh reality.
I'm sorry that happened. When you look back, you said something that's so funny, Bryce, and I shared this. I think it was the other day with somebody that was on the show, and I said, I'm watching the draft on television. I'm watching everybody floss with the stuff, and I can understand you worked hard to get that, but you ask yourself, does money really make you greed? Is
I
money the
don't
root
think
of
that it's
all
that
evil?
simple.
Does it really take does it really influence somebody that much that their pride elevates so much that they forget where they came from or how they got it and forget the other people that are below?
Here's my answer to that, Andre. Money is nothing more than a resource, and it's a magnifier. So whatever you already are, it will magnify. It provides access, it provides ease,
Hmm.
it can provide luxury. But like I said, it will magnify who you already are. And so if you are a flawed man, it will magnify your flaws. If you are benevolent, it will allow you to be more benevolent and more giving. And I learned that in a very real way, that I was never going to get more money again if I didn't do the work on myself to become a better version, to be a man that could handle the weight of being truly successful, not just having money,
Right.
but being truly successful. And I had to learn that in that moment. And my life has reflected that ever since then. And I'm proud of that.
What did your wife? You had to have a moment of your life where you and your wife sat down and you had to share the struggles and the misfortunes. What was some advice that she shared with you during your moments of trying to reconstruct your life?
She really didn't give me any advice, honestly. She just gave me support.
Okay.
She said, you know, we'll figure it out. And she reminded me that she was on my team. That's why she was willing to go back to work when she did, and why she's showed up the way that she has over the years, is because she's a good woman and she understands how to support in that way.
So,
And in fairness, I didn't know that she was going to show up that way. She had every reason to bail. I mean, she could have, but she didn't.
you wind up talking about you getting into podcasting. Were you kind of nervous? Because me and you talked about this when we met. The people that had been doing it had resources, they had a brand, and it's easy, like you said, when you have resources, which is capital, or people that you know, and more importantly, that you got a brand, which is your name. You didn't have those. Am I correct?
Correct. Yeah, I was a nobody.
Why did you even decide to go that route? Because now you got to build three basic foundations: brand, resources, money.
I'm kind of crazy, man. I just
look, I already don't know that.
yeah, I wanted in. I wanted in. I thought to myself, this seems right up my alley. It seems fun. There's the blue sky, even in 2024, which is the time that we're recording this, there's still so much opportunity in blue sky ahead of podcasting. You know, back in 2012, when this happened, 2011, I mean, lights out. There was so much it was there, and I saw it differently. I saw what it was. I didn't see podcasting as this little niche thing, whatever. I saw it as what it actually is. If you have a podcast, you own a distribution channel. You own a radio or television station. You can control what content goes on there. You can control who advertises with you or doesn't. You can control the narrative. I saw all of it. And I also knew, because I've always been somewhat of a first adopter with technology. I got the very first iPhone when it came out. I've been a guy that does that. And I thought the tech associated with this is going to evolve to where all of this is going to become very, very easy. And if I get myself to a position of skill and authority at a certain point, it will magnify what is possible for me. And I didn't even know what that meant. I just saw and felt this sort of possibility, and I went with it.
Really? When you shared it with your wife, what did she say?
She thought it makes sense because I'm a blabbermouth, man. Like I got the gift of gab. I love talking. And she's like, yeah, go put a mic in front of it next time you're doing it. That'd be great. She was supportive.
Let's take the viewers down another part and the reason why you're on the show. I like to always show that beast mindset and overcoming and adversity and so forth. But you definitely have done that. But then also I need to let people know that we also want to be a resource for you. Not only just inspiration, but a resource, because there's tons of people, and I shared this with you because the reason I reached out to Bryce was I didn't understand the monetization part of the business. I didn't understand the hoops, and everybody was coming all over social media. Well, do this to my, do this. You got to do this. It was so much information, and like I told you, I lost money developing this podcast, the studio. I lost money because I was listening to so many different people that act like they were experts, when really the only expert they wanted was my money. And in the end, I had to figure it out. So I saw your platform. I reached out to you, and you shared with me a lot of stuff. And I was like, you know what, Bryce, come on the show and tell people what they need to know about creating a successful podcast where they don't fall into the traps of listening to 50 people or 36 people over in China, Brazil, and all these people that seem to be experts. And I got to thinking, if you're experts, where's your podcast?
Yeah. Well, here's the progression of that for me, just briefly, because I think that it matters as I start to share some of these insights relative to growing your show, how to turn it into money, and how to have it be something that's valuable.
Right.
When I started my first podcast, I went to YouTube University and learned how to do it all myself.
Really? And
I even paid for like a small digital course that a guy put out that helped me to kind of understand some things, but it still was incomplete. And so I just, as the incredible marketer Seth Godin says, I just shipped it. I just put it out there and would adjust. And what I found is a common theme, because I would start to compare my show with other people's shows, and I would start to see shows that were starting to succeed and gain relevancy and growth, and mine, was at a different level, or mine was and somebody else's wasn't. And I would notice this, and I would compare it, and I would be very critical about, well, what's the reality of what's going on here? Let's take off the rose-colored lenses. Let's see what the real nuts and bolts is.
Right.
And on a very simple level, the company that I own is called Media Automated. And we have two basic parallel tracks that run as a part of what we offer. On the one side, we know exactly how to help you start and maintain a show that will resonate in the ears and eyes of the people that you want to have hear it.
Right.
On the other, and in the meantime, turning you into somebody that's known and credible, and you can dominate your niche no matter what industry it is. That's one thing we provided, and we have tons of results that can prove that statement. On the other side, we do episode production, we do media creation, and we do it in an automated way to where somebody like yourself, Andre, or somebody else, like it's hands off. You handle creating your show, you speak into the mic, into the camera what you're going to say, and then we handle all the heavy lifting so that it's something that's smooth and seamless, and you can go about creating more of what you want to do, and we handle all the rough stuff.
Right.
Now, when it comes to monetization, the answer, well, to be clear what that means, monetizing your show means that your show is a source of money. It brings money in. There are several different ways to do it. And I will say that the reason why your show isn't being monetized is because on a fundamental level, you don't know who you're speaking to, and you don't know how to leverage that relationship of who your listener is. When if you were to go through some of the crazy statistics about podcasts, like for example, there's like at last check, and these numbers might be wrong because they evolve all the time, but I know that they're 95% true. I'll say that. Last time I checked, there was 2.7 million podcasts on the Apple Podcast platform.
Right.
Only 200,000 of those podcasts had over 10 episodes. That's a banana statistic when you think about it. Because what it means everybody wants to get in the game and then they die. Okay? They let it go. They don't know what they're doing. Why is that? What is causing it to do that?
What do you think it does?
I know exactly why.
My theory is, and you can correct me, my theory is that they have an idea, but that idea requires money.
Nope.
What do you think it is? That was just my theory.
I know what it is, and this is what it is. People build podcasts without considering who's going to listen to them. They build a podcast for themselves. They build one that they think would be interesting. They build a podcast that they think that they would find entertaining or valuable or whatever. And then when it goes out there, when they put it out there, their friends and family listen to it and they go, good job, great stuff. But because there was no intention behind who exactly needs to listen to it or should listen to it, and there's been no attempt in the creation, the sound, the logos, the duration, the release schedule to try to fit into the life of your ideal listener in a way that would work, dies on the vine. Because what happens is you get to a point, and to your credit, where you do need money to continue to grow your show. You can bootstrap things on the front end, but there comes a point where you realize how much damn work it takes to do all the promotional stuff, to create the marketing pieces, to master and record and produce your episodes, and even with free resources like AI and whatnot, it still requires a ton of attention. I remember back in the day when I would do this, I would record an hour-long interview, and when I would look into what it was taking me, it would take me 6 hours to minimum to edit it, because I would go through and make sure everything was good. And I had a highly produced show. I had commercials and I had intro music and I had the whole thing. It was like it was very highly produced. Takes 6 hours-ish to produce that. Then I had to go and I had to figure out, well, what exactly were some of the important clips or snippets from the show. So I'd have to re-listen to it several times, take the timestamp down. I got to put this here. Then I would have to go and using Photoshop and Lightroom and other resources I'd create these cards to help me to promote it. And then I had to upload it. And I'm 10, 12 hours in on a single podcast. And I don't even know if 10 people are going to listen to it.
Yeah.
So that's what happens is you do it wrong from the jump. And then you realize, I actually need people to care so that I have the juice to keep going on this in the growth stage. So money helps with that, where you can outsource those resources to a company like mine, but also you have to be dialed in. And making sure you're speaking to the people that you want to have listen to this. Because if you don't, like I said, you will realize, holy shit, this is fucking hard. I don't want to do this anymore. And you stop.
I can tell it wasn't hard for you. How long did it take you to really master and understand the industry as a whole?
Well, I don't say this with any sort of false humility. I'm still working on that. It's a shifting landscape as it stands. But I started understanding some of the general principles pretty well in 3-6 months. And I tapped into some resources as well that I could go to help me see as it changes and whatnot. It's been an interesting journey to watch because, that was 12 years ago, 13 years ago. Mm-hmm. And, one of the biggest scams that used to be out there that's a little bit more difficult to get away with nowadays is the idea that you can buy listeners. There's these click farms in Malaysia and Southeast Asia where you can send your stuff to them, pay, and all of a sudden you got 20,000 downloads on your podcast, but yet nobody's actually listening to it. Just for the sake of vanity metrics so that you can go hoodwink some advertiser to say, hey, look, I've got this, whatever. I saw that happen more times than I can count, people, and you always would get burned because the truth comes out. You cannot hide the truth. The biggest growth that I've seen, though, has been in the podcasting space, has been the adoption of businesses to use podcasts as a way to bring light to their industries. Mm-hmm. As an example, my team and we produce podcasts for attorneys. We have doctors that have podcasts, and they're using the podcasting platform as a way to dispel misconceptions about what it is that they offer. And Right. They do it in an entertaining way. One of my most proud moments was when we figured this out, and I had a client who was a real estate agent. I'll share this quick story. He was a buyer's agent in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is where I was located at the time. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona now, but I was in Salt Lake, and he had written this book, and the book was called The Top 10 Mistakes Home Buyers Make. And using the word book that's loose. Yeah. It was a pamphlet, and it was just 10 chapters, and it was pretty decent, but it looked crappy. It looked like one of those, cheap religious pamphlets that somebody would leave at your door type thing. It just wasn't cool. It wasn't marketing savvy. Like, it just wasn't good, but the content in it was great. Mm-hmm. Well, we took that and we turned it into a 10-episode podcast where we actually took each one of his chapters that was a mistake. I put him in front of a mic and he would riff about what it was that mistake was, why it mattered, what would happen if they fell for it, right. what they would protect against if they did right, the whole thing. And then that podcast, it wasn't a ongoing sort of periodical that would release on a weekly basis. It was 10 episodes we released all at once, and it just sits there. And he uses that as a way when he meets new clients to be like, hey, if you're going to buy a house, if you don't want to use me, that's fine, but I want to make sure you're good. Here's free resource. And everybody that listens to that show for him builds an amount of trust to where he gets tons of business on that just as something that's sat there. The adoption of business owners looking at the platform of podcasting it's been what's made my company, if I'm being fully transparent, because majority of my clients are coaches or consultants or professionals that are in industries that have misconceptions out there that they fight in the process to gain and create new business relationships. And when you have an offering out here like this that in an entertaining solutions-based way can allow a potential customer or client on their own terms to learn enough about somebody and their product to see if they want to use them, it's very powerful for generating leads.
If you're looking for a client, this is a two-part question. You're looking for a client. What is your ideal client? And number two, what individual should start a podcast and what individual shouldn't? Because everybody can do it. So that's probably a three-part question for you.
Sure. I'll start with the last question first. So there's really nobody that couldn't benefit from having a podcast. And here's why. One of the aspects of my business when we're helping you create a new show is it's my responsibility to elevate you into the type of host that somebody would want to listen to.
Right.
So that means that we're coaching. I'm a coach in a way. Like, I'm coaching you on how to tell a better story. I'm coaching you on how to understand different frameworks so that you can build tension and have there be an arc and a narrative associated with what you're saying, so that you can arrive at a place message-wise in your show that has an intended result attached to it. And also to create tension in your episodes so that at the end of it, the listener is inspired to do whatever you as a host are asking them to do. Sometimes people's personalities and their skill sets would not make them a good podcaster, you might think. But the beautiful thing is that it's just like with athletics. Certain people come with skill. Some people are Rudy and they had to work for it. But if you're willing to do work, everything about being a successful podcaster is learnable.
Right.
You can learn how to tell a better story. You can learn how to be more articulate and to remove your filler words. You can learn how to be engaging and magnetic behind the microphone. And so I help people with that. So there's really nobody that wouldn't work if they're, I guess the caveat would be, if they're unwilling to do the work, nobody's just going to show up and be good at this. So magnifying that, if you have a business that has a product or service, and you want to bring light to what that product or service can do for a potential customer, that's just fertile soil to spend marketing dollars to develop that. And like I said before, there's two ways you can do it. You can look at it like a magazine or look at it like a book. Like a book is a one-time thing. You wrote it, it's out there. A magazine comes out every week or every other day or whatever. And you can take either approach depending on how much new information comes out and is required understanding for your specific industry for product or service. When it comes to me and my company, what my ideal is are those people. Like, I want to help you as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, to be able to get your expertise out there in a way that allows people a non-abrasive way to determine whether or not you would be a fit for them to work with, whatever it is, whether it's in real estate or as an attorney or a doctor, whether you're a comedian, whether you're a sports guy, whatever it is. There's really no industry that same thing doesn't apply to. And I love that about this industry. The beautiful thing about podcasting is that if you go into it and you are committed, it will develop you into a better business owner. It will develop you into a better person. You will see the truth that nobody's going to come save you and that you have to do the work on yourself to be able to achieve a certain level of success. And then beautifully, it will give you an opportunity to experience that success, because if you do it right, podcasting can make great money as well as being a lead magnet into your business. Now, other than the business aspect of things, you can make money with podcasts doing sponsorships. You can advertise things. You become an affiliate for other people that have products or service. The mere building of the platform and the listenership based off of your engineered interest in what you know they want and you creating a product to which they would want to listen to can give you ears and eyeballs to put things in front of them that you can make money on selling.
How hard is it for podcasters to really flourish and get the sponsorship dollars? Like, when you're creating something for somebody, what are some of the key things that you stress with them so they can attract sponsorship, so they can know how to go out and sell their shows?
Well, my first encouragement to answer that question, my first encouragement to those type of individuals is that you've got to be engaged in your own business and in your own podcast in a way to which you have a vision about it. So having said, I remember when we first connected, Andre, you had shared that there was a very large sponsorship opportunity that was given to you, and it blew me away. I'm like, dude, that's in a Fortune 500 level of who's trying to sponsor your show.
Right.
That's a unicorn. Let's be honest. Like, that's an opportunity that was not every new podcast is going to have that opportunity, but there are plenty of opportunities on a local and regional level for you to provide value to local businesses in a way that is valuable to them and the access to your platform of the show. I'll give you a personal example. One of the very first sponsors of my Rules of Success podcast back in 2013 was a lending company that lent money for buying semi-tractor trailers, snow plows, combines for farms. And the reason why they were willing to sponsor and have ad placement on my show is because there was a demographic of my listenership that were entrepreneurs that were in that space as owners. They weren't the guys driving the tractors, but they were the ones owning the farm or owning the company that was doing the shipping or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And so they go, well, like, they did some math. They're like, so if we sponsor you, and just full transparency, they paid me, that specific client paid me $1,500 a month for 6 months for a mid-roll 60-second ad placement in the middle of my show. So I would have to do a break. Hey, this is brought to you by blah, blah lending. And this is what we do. And I produced a whole commercial, and here's the website to go, whatever. In the course of that 6 months, they had paid me $9,000, and they got 2 loans out of it. That's it. 2 loans. But the process of profit and what they did created 2 new clients that had since gone back many, many times to them for other things. And the commissions alone on the 2 loans that they did was close to $17,000. Right. So they paid $9,000 to make $8,000. Now that's not a really good percentage, but that's still money that was made.
Right.
They did not lose money on. They took a flyer, and we worked out other deals in the future.
Right.
There are companies and individuals that anybody listening and watching the show knows at a local or regional level to which they could approach. And the beautiful part is that podcasting now isn't some obscure thing that people are trying to wonder if they can do it. Now the obstacles in trying to get affiliate sponsorships and actual sponsorships for things like I just shared are more, they want to make sure that you actually have a platform and that the things that you're sharing are real. Like I said, there was so much fake numbers that were easy to manufacture back in the earlier days of this. Fortunately now, like even, Apple and Spotify will kick you off their platform if they see these irregularities with what's going on with your downloads.
How important are the numbers? I shared that with you.
Not at all.
Okay. Because I remember sharing that with you, and that's what everybody was saying, well, you need numbers. I'm like, okay, well, I didn't have the numbers when that big company came to me, but like I shared with you, I wasn't ready to get in that elevator right now. Well, my craft wasn't crafted enough. I didn't have the right people in place. So even though that might have sounded good to have that, and people would say them, I'm like, okay, that's good, but I didn't have I was not ready, plain and simple,
right,
to even get there. Everything was new. I wasn't ready. When that happens to an individual, how do you set them down and say, we're not ready yet?
Well, I'll go back to what I had just previously said, where you have to be engaged as the owner and operator and producer of your show and of your business. Your podcast is a business. Let's not kid ourselves. Even if you're doing commentary on a Real Housewives TV show as your podcast for entertainment purposes, it's still a business. And when you treat it that way, opportunities will come. So the way that I don't think that it happens enough in the way that you experienced to where people need to worry about that some Fortune 500 company is just going to come throw an offer at them and they're not ready for it. I don't think that happens enough to where that would be a thing. Because here's the reality. Look at your own experience, Andre. You were a deer in headlights. You're like, wait a sec. Yeah. You were realizing the magnitude of what you were being offered, and the weight of that made you realize, hey, not yet, man. I gotta figure this part out first.
Yeah.
Which is noble, because that's the longer play. That very same opportunity and others like it will come again and have come again for you as you've built out this beautiful platform in your studio and the location you have and everything. You've done it right. But it's because, and I'll give you props on this, you take it serious for you. You are the leader of your show. You are the one that knows the buck stops with me. It's my vision. It's my execution. You can fill in all the people around you. You need resources to get the job done, but you're the guy that's steering the ship.
When you're steering your ship, thank you so much for that compliment, because a lot of people don't see the work that goes into creating. It's a 24-hour job.
Yeah.
It's 24 hours. When the buck stopped at your station, what do you do to keep going? How do you bring new stuff into your world? Because it's always changing. You always got to find new content. Like, how do you keep it going on your end?
Well, that's a really good question, and I think it's important to be adaptable. When I work with a new client, the process of creating and managing a brand new show is in three phases. The first phase is the concept phase, meaning you have to understand conceptually exactly what your show is. Simply, you got to know the answer to two really important questions. What problem do you solve and who do you solve it for? And when you have a deep understanding of those two questions, you can then start making decisions for what your show should be named and all of it. That's the concept phase. We move into the content phase, which is when we're actually recording, we're practicing, we're getting better, we're coaching, we're doing all that. And then we get to a place where you're prepared, your show is engineered correctly, we've got the deliverables and the assets ready, and then we go to launch. And then at launch, we go into the third phase, which is the continuity phase. One of the biggest parts and pieces of the continuity phase is being willing to pivot. Sometimes your show's not working because it's not working, and you got to try something new. I'll share this personal experience. As you may recall, my very first podcast that I started was called Rules of Success, and it was about succeeding in all of the areas of life, and it was an interview-based podcast. I had this experience that I thought was a compliment and was a good experience, but after I analyzed and thought about it, it wasn't. It was kind of a slap in the face. This guy told me, "Man, your show is so great. You're like the Jimmy Fallon of podcasting." Now, as a comedian myself, I love Jimmy Fallon. I think he's funny, right, and I think that he's an affable guy. And he's, of course, the host of The Tonight Show. He's a great host. And I was like, oh, man, that's great. And then I started thinking about it. And I thought, wait a sec. Jimmy is known for fawning over his guest. Oh, my gosh, you're the funniest person I've ever seen. Like, he's just this kind of laughable, gregarious, sort of kid-like energy up there when he's interviewing people. Right. And what it does is it deflects all the attention off him and onto the guest, which is a good thing if you're being paid $30 million a year by NBC to host a TV show. But if you're some podcaster running it out of your basement and you're going broke because you can't afford how to do this, that's not something you want to be good at. You want to be good at building your own authority. Right. And so I started looking at it and I realized, man, that was not a compliment. Everybody that comes on my show gets business, they get attention, and I don't. I'm just seen as the guy that's directing traffic to bring these people together. Right. And at the time, I was starting to realize there was an opportunity both for coaching, where I could coach other people some of the things that I was learning as a result of my show, as well as even doing some of the podcast type of services for other people. And so I thought, I rebranded my show at that point. I was 182 episodes in. Wow, that's a lot of episodes. Wow. Yeah. That podcast, I've since shut it down, but when I shut it down, it had 720 episodes or something. What I did though is I go, okay, so how do I want to take what's good about what I've created and twist it, and make it so that the current listenership would still be a part of it, and have it serve better opportunities that I could create for myself, my family, and for other people. So not only did you my podcast, but you was able to pivot. Yes. Wow. I changed the name. I changed everything. I went from a once a week show to a daily show. Okay. I called my show then The Daily Rule. And I would do a 7 to 10 minute episode every day where I would share a success-based principle, and I would bring in clips from my past episodes. Oh, I interviewed this guy. This is what we said. This is my take on it. And it allowed me to give commentary to interviews I had already done, which of course made downloads from the back catalog continue to raise, right, as well as it focused on, it put the spotlight on me for a moment and my ability to discern and to dissect these success-based principles and to represent them in a way that might be easier to understand for a listener. So I did that for a year. And what came out of that was the seeds of what is Media Automated today, and which got me doing business consulting as well, where I would actually have businesses approach me to come in and to help them with the marketing of their business, the messaging and branding of what they were doing, have it be that they were presenting something to the market that was more appealing to the people they were trying to have become their clients. That pivot was huge. I don't pivot. I don't know that I'm in the business I'm in today at all. And I even had done other pivots throughout that. I went then to where during COVID, I pivoted again and I renamed it again. I was noticing that there was a lot of seeds of rebellious spirit that was in the air during COVID.
Yeah.
There were certain people that would get in line with what they were being told as what it was. And there were certain people that were like, that does not add up. I'm not into that. I'm not doing that. I'm going to hold back and wait. And so I changed it from the daily rule to be called Rules of the Rebellion. And I had this like Star Wars thing, but it was a similar thing. It was just more of an aggressive type of message that was like, look, man, handle your own shit first. Be a man, like, lean into the principles that make you strong as a man, self-sustaining, get your house in order, be the type of person that could stand alone, get rich. The way you battle all this nonsense in our culture, in our country right now, is to be a person of means so that you actually have a seat at the table when you can help make decisions that would impact people. And the pivot was perfectly timed. It continued to grow. It wasn't until 2021 that I said, I'm going to do a whole different route, because I was at that time, back in when was it? It was 2017. I got into comedy.
Okay.
Started doing stand-up, and I was using podcasting as a way to elevate my fan base for stand-up. Mm-hmm. And this whole other thing, it just didn't work for me personally, even though it was a viable podcast and worked. And it's just another sign that, like, when you do this right, you can build whatever you want to build, no matter what. Like, there's no industry or niche that can't be effective. You have to be willing to let go of the concept of what I call vanity metrics. Your podcast and download numbers don't matter. But like, as a comedian, if I'm selling tickets to my shows because I have a podcast and it's known that I'm selling tickets, that's a great show. If I'm getting business for my current company by having a podcast, it doesn't matter how many downloads I have. I have commas in my bank account. I would rather take commas in my bank account than downloads in my iTunes server.
You know what? This has been a great episode, Bryce. I appreciate you taking time to come on. Before we wrap up, how can the viewers get in contact with you to elevate their podcasts and get more and more information on how to create and develop a sustainable podcast?
So it's pretty simple. If you just go to my website, mediaautomated.com, there's everything you would need. There's testimonials. There's a calendar link if you want to get on my schedule to have a conversation. There's a bunch of videos and stuff you can look at there. Some free resources as well if you're not into that, but you just want some help. And then on the other aspect of things, if you want to connect with me personally and kind of see what my life is about, whatnot, I would just recommend go to my Instagram page, which is just my name, @Bryce Prescott. And that's easy. DM me. We could chat if you have questions. I have a commitment to provide way more value than I charge. And so if there's something that I can help you with, even if it's not a fit for us to be a client, I would be more than willing to point you in the right direction, give you some tips and pointers. The mantra and mission of my company is to rid the world of shitty podcasts. And the way to do it is making better ones. We raise the bar. And so I'm committed to doing that. And I would be more than willing to help anybody that's a listener of your show to grow a podcast. And even if they're not my client, like, I just want to make sure that they've got some key principles they understand that would work for them.
Bryce, leave the viewers with something that beast mindset that you have so they can keep moving forward.
Say that again. I missed that part of the question.
I said, leave the viewers with that beast mindset. Leave them with that initial statement that can make them get up and call to action.
I will tell you this. Everything in your life, every ounce of success you could achieve, everything of beauty in a relationship, every connection to God, it all comes down to your identity and to how you see yourself. And if you are not willing to see yourself as a winner, you will never win. One of the most difficult things along that journey when you adopt the identity and mindset of being a winner is sometimes the evidence isn't there to show that that's you. And that's okay. Keep pushing. You are a winner if you believe you are. There is a beautiful quote by Henry Ford that says, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So go to it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.